Jack. I'm going to talk about, it fits in the category of anything remotely JavaScript related. It is JavaScript related, it's very not technical, so I hope you'll bear with me. Basically, it's a really cool open source project that I'm hoping you guys will at least stick with me and listen to, and then if it at all strikes your fancy, I think it's a really cool thing to work on. So it's called OpenAQ, it's open source air quality monitoring. My name's Jack. I veered towards this because I'm interested in environmental science and Chinese and web development, so I just got back from living in Shanghai, and which is kind of how I came across this. So the caveats, it's not terribly technical, especially compared to the first three grade talks, although there might be some relation to Tableau here. Kind of basic JS skills and a broad overview, but I do think it's because of the topic matter of air quality monitoring and an open source approach to that, I think it's kind of timely right now with the environmental issues that are kind of present in politics and the media. It's significant. I can talk about why this particular project has been gaining steam recently and very active. They just have one full-time employee, but a pretty active developer community. So the project of OpenAQ, or Open Air Quality, is kind of three prongs, which are all JavaScript related, which is what I want to talk about today, the goal, making air quality accessible. The basic idea is that there are lots of air quality monitoring points throughout the world that are both government or research funded, and then in the long term, there are also ways to get air quality data from low-cost sensors, just like individuals, but they're scattered across different languages, different websites, different levels of accessibility, and so this project is aggregating them. You can see 37 million measurements taken since they started, 43 countries, and they take in about 130,000 data points each day. And the reason I heard about it and why I think it's kind of relevant, they just did an AMA on our science, which was fairly popular, well attended, lots of great questions where they talked about their idea of air inequality. Again, not to get too much on my soapbox, but it's especially coming back from China, it's a very relevant topic that I think is cool to help contribute to, the idea of recognizing air inequality in different countries. And then they were one of 6 projects nominated for the Open Science Prize, which is another really cool thing that I wasn't aware of and am now aware of, different open source projects contributing to some scientific endeavor. So the 3 prongs that I mentioned, we'll take a look. You can see them in their 3 main GitHub repositories, but 3 steps of fetching data. So from all those disparate sources that I mentioned, across different countries, different areas, then an API, which is really the most useful thing for really a wide variety of applications, which they're just starting to see, whether it's community members building bots or researchers getting the data that they need to look at countries, countries that are important for air quality research, rather than just where we have a lot of the information already, like the US. And then OpenAQ.org, which is what I'm most interested in because I do front end. And that's something they just developed recently, actually doing some of their own data visualization. So we're going to look at each of those things a little bit. So the first is fetch. This is the GitHub for OpenAQ, and these are the 3 main ones: the fetch API and OpenAQ.org. So for fetch, the primary thing that needs to be done is kind of what the problem we were talking about with Tableau, which is that you want the same information from all these sources. You want they measure 6 different pollutants. The one that most people hear about is PM 2.5, which is a big issue, especially in China and India, but also things like ozone. So you get these pollutants, and you need time and location, but they're scattered across a lot of different websites or APIs. So people write adapters, and that's one of the biggest things that you can contribute to on GitHub, is to write an adapter for a given either research data source or government. So just for example, Poland, this is just the simple adapter that's written to take this website, which is really, really unintelligible to me, but allows for OpenAQ to have access to all the data from this government Polish website. So the fetch step, and really some of the coolest work I think on this project comes from that. They list all the potential new data sources just under issues. So especially if you have a language skill that would make this easy, this is a great place to kind of jump in. Then once they have the data, they keep it, OpenAQ keeps it in Postgres SQL, and like I mentioned, they're at about 130,000 data points a day. So another step that they're looking to take is optimizing that a bit more since they started much smaller. But then they have their API, and it's fairly straightforward, but a really key part of this organization is the idea that with better access to information worldwide comes better educated public, better decision making, better research. And so another thing that they focus on is they only take raw data measurements, and that's what makes it hard initially to find some of these measurements. But from there, you can get that raw data information. I mean, it's just simple API stuff comes in JSON. I just pulled up the the China data points, the most recent ones. So like we were talking about here, that's the first two steps: fetch, API, and then definitely what I'm most interested in is their website. So openaq.org didn't really exist with any sort of functionality until recently after a big push. And what they have now is really quite cool. Two main functionalities is mapping and data comparison. So mapping. So importantly, this is the data they have right now. And you'll notice that there's a lot in the US. And that's kind of the problem that they're working to address is we know really well the air quality statistics in areas where statistically the air quality is quite good, and a lot less in India, and even less so in China. They're limited by the fact that China does put out information on their air quality, but they typically don't do it in raw data. They kind of, China collates it before they put it out. So that's a project that I'm helping to work on also, is to find better data sources for China. And then there's also comparison. So I pulled up three, Shanghai, where I just got back from, and Delhi, and then us. And you'll notice this is the air inequality thing. But JavaScript meetup, not just vaguely related. This is D3, and everything, the coolest part is OpenAQ.org is all React. And that's sort of, I've just jumped into it recently, but that's sort of what I've been working on, and some really nice stuff in terms of D3 for comparison, and then with the mapping, for example, picking, like I mentioned, the different pollutants that you can choose from, so you can look at ozone, and it'll populate. Here, you'll notice there's different color coding based on whether they've seen recent measurements. So a lot to work on there, and if front end is your thing, I'm working on trying to show all possible data points rather than just the specific pollutant at the beginning, but there's all sorts of things, including better labels once you do pick a point that you're interested in, giving more information here, including like source reliability and things like that. So those are the three prongs. And I guess kind of a altruistic pitch, if you're at all interested in any of those things, especially that front end site, which I think is a lot of fun to work on. Those are potentially worth taking a look at. And then there's the community aspect. What OpenAQ is hoping for is that people having access to this information, easy access, will lead to more projects and more public awareness. And I just want to highlight one real quick, which is just kind of a fun thing that someone put together called Smokey. And so if you're on Twitter, OpenAQ data with the city that you're interested in. And someone took the API and put together a little bot that just responds to those hashtags with a sort of graphical representation of current air quality. We'll see if that refresh goes. I'll come back to that in a sec. And that's pretty much it. Yeah, like I promised, very not technical, so I apologize if you're expecting more of that. Yeah.
So I recently learned that climate change is a Chinese hoax.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering what your feelings are on that.
It set the project back a little bit when that was discovered. Yeah. So it explains their lack of data because once you see the data from China, I'm sure at that point then you realize that it's most definitely.
No, what do you guys need? Like more? Do you need more front end, back end?
Honestly, so like I mentioned, the front end aspects, this React app, are relatively new because they actually worked with a company called Development Seed. OpenAQ has some funding from some corporate sources and then sources like that Open Science has. So they worked with a company called Development Seed to get this started. And so it's in a good place right now, at least a relatively updated place. And the thing that would always be best, I think, for them is contributing to new sources, basically writing that version of what you would do with Tableau to take sources and kind of standardize for it. So I think that might be the most important part. And then at some point, it looks like as they expand, they want to optimize their database a little bit with the fetch.
I'm guessing they're consuming a lot of data.
Yeah.
To put in their Postgres, that seems like.
Yeah. Yeah.
Employees across the world always measure, and I think what I saw was programs for cubic meter.
Yeah.
So that's a standard.
That is the standard. Yes. Or if potentially the U.S. word weird, right? So maybe we didn't do micrograms. That part is easy to convert as long as they're giving some ppm or density. That part's easy to convert. What's not so easy is when someone gives an AQI or an API, like a pollution index or a quality index. That's what, at least at this point, they're not using.
That's the aggregate.
Yeah, and it varies by country is the problem.
But to speak to what you were saying, this is a real problem, especially in China. China, every day, the air quality index of the amount of pollutants in the air is higher than the maximum contaminant level of air in the United States every day.
Yeah.
And some days, the government simply issues a warning to say, do not go outside.
Yeah.
That's interesting. To go off of that, I saw a Kickstarter where this guy actually was motivated by the problem in China to start this protocol like purifying things. But
Was that, would you?
This is Smokey. Yeah, Smokey just responded.
something like
It's good here. Good. Congratulations. Yeah. What's up?
I noticed that just looking at the map, developing countries have basically no collections of. I'm just curious if you know anything about why there's nothing there.
Yeah. China and India are two good examples, and the points you're seeing. India has a bit more. They have some research universities that put out. What you need is someone who cares about this enough to buy what's typically a $10,000 sensor and install it. And so India has some research universities, but in China it's just the U.S. consulates and the U.S. embassies. China has plenty of measurements, but again, they collate it and they don't put out the the micrograms per cubic meter. And that's something that I'm working on. Someone I met in Shanghai whose company does work with this. He's working on that also to find some of these sources. And a long-term goal for OpenAQ is to start working with more of an Internet of Things approach where you can use the low-cost sensors. You can get a sensor about air quality that costs $10, but right now the quality and the standards on that are really low. And so that's something they're working towards, a way to, I don't know, maybe you have to have someone go verify that their sensor is working accurately for a couple days before you start accepting their data. But that's the long-term goal where you can start to actually have people, rather than us just developing, contributing, people contributing the data. And yeah, just in case anyone didn't see that, that was Smokey that responded. I'll leave on that. We'd love it if you join us on Slack. That'll just take you to our Slack, or come talk to me afterwards. It's all on GitHub also.